It was a long and tiring day. It seemed like I was constantly on the phone and putting out fires. For some reason, it seemed like everyone wanted an update on their account today. I was anticipating a restful night, but that didn't happen. I got home at the usual time, so it was obvious that I was destined to catch them exactly where I found them. On my bed lay Elaine's wife, my brother, and my brother's wife. There were satisfied smirks on the faces of my brother and his wife, and my wife smiled broadly and looked me in the eye. "Hi, kiddo," she said, as calm and nonchalant as ever. "Elaine, what's that?" "Hey, bro," my brother Porter interjected. "We're here to have an adult conversation about how things are going to go from here." "Yeah, Parker, how things are going to be." "Yes, my parents gave us both last names instead of first names. They wanted us to stand out. Well, we did stand out, though usually not for the better." This last comment came from my sister-in-law, Tamsin. She and I never got along, mostly because I thought she was a bitch, and she took offense that I didn't bow down to her and put her on the pedestal she thought she deserved. Of course, I didn't like my older brother very much either. He was a bully and a condescending asshole. I loved my wife, but now I was seriously reconsidering. "Well, it looks like we need to have an adult conversation. Do you mind if I change first?" I asked. I had already headed for the bathroom, behind which was the closet and the change of clothes I was looking for. I never liked business clothes and always changed as soon as I got home. As I pulled on shorts and a t-shirt, I could still hear them talking softly amongst themselves. After getting dressed, I grabbed a few more things and then headed back to the bedroom. I don't know if Elaine had a sudden epiphany or heard some noise, but suddenly my wife exclaimed, "Oh, crap, so that's where he keeps—" Click, click, click. The gun safe. It was about time I put a round in the chamber. Now I had their attention. "Now I'm ready for our adult conversation. So let's talk." "What's the gun for?" the jerk asked. "In case I don't like what you have to say." Bitch Tamsin quickly tired of what she thought was an empty threat. "Oh, come on. You're not going to shoot anyone, and you know it. The damn thing probably isn't even loaded." She threw off her blanket and climbed out of bed, apparently deciding that this was the place to take action. I had never seen her naked before, though I really wanted to, but that suddenly changed. Her big breasts were just as stunning as I had imagined. Porter and Elaine were just as fixated on what Tamsin was showing off. The shot at the headboard of the bed and presumably the wall behind it, about 6 inches from my brother's head, caught them and Tamsin off guard. They all looked at me, shock written all over their faces. "First, let me thank you, Tamsin, for giving me the opportunity to see you naked off my wish list. You have amazing breasts." She even smiled. The bitch clearly genuinely appreciated the compliment. Unbelievable as hell. But then I saw an opportunity to offend my wife a little. I looked at her. "I'm sorry, Lainey, but your breasts have always been too small for me." She lowered her gaze to her breasts, which were now exposed because of the shifting bedspread. "You always said you liked my breasts, that anything bigger than a handful was a waste of time." "Well, of course I did. It's not like you criticize the breasts you're trying to get, and you certainly don't tell your wife you wish she had bigger ones." None of that was true. I loved her breasts, equally loved breasts of any size, but I knew she was self-conscious about them, especially after seeing Tamsin, and perhaps more importantly, after seeing Tamsin in a bikini. Now that was a sight to behold. Oh, back to the story. "So, Tamsin, if you don't want your husband's head blown off, I'd suggest you get back in that bed." She did so, though now keeping some distance between her and Porter. And I also noticed that she didn't pull the covers over her breasts, leaving them bare for my pleasure. Narcissistic bitch. But I admit to enjoying the view. And Elaine left her breasts uncovered too, and I think my brother realized it wasn't for his benefit. "Now that we've got that sorted out," I continued, "who wants to go first?" I moved my gaze from one face to the other, waiting for one of them to speak. I assumed they expected me to be more submissive as they dictated my new subordinate role in the unholy foursome they intended to create, and now I didn't know what to do or say. "No? No one? All right then, I'll go first and tell you what I've managed to find out so far. The three of you are obviously in a sexual relationship. There's no doubt about that, I suppose. You're very comfortable lying naked in bed together, so I assume it's been going on for some time. And that was your big discovery. You were here waiting for me to come home so I could see that Elaine had screwed you both and that you intended to continue. I suppose you wanted to humiliate me and put me in some kind of submissive role. How am I doing? My question was met with silence as both Elaine and Tamsin cast glances in the direction of their co-conspirators, as if expecting one of them to say something. I wondered whose plan this was and why they didn't just continue sleeping behind my back, at least as far as they were concerned. What? No feedback? Okay, I'll just continue then. So it's assumed that you were just going to dump all of this on me and expect me to accept it, or at least accept it. What, I wonder, made you think that? Maybe I did something that made you think I was just going to walk away? I shifted my gaze from face to face again, looking for an answer, a confession, and I thought I noticed an almost imperceptible shake of Elaine's head, but I could have been wrong. Okay, so you didn't think I'd just accept it. That suggests that you thought there was some way to get me to accept it. All three of them involuntarily looked at me when I said the word force, so I realized I was on the right track. Oh boy, that's quite a reaction. Does anyone want to elaborate on their plan? Anyone? You know, for people who wanted to talk, you're not very talkative. How can you get me to accept this? Let's look at the options. The most obvious ploy is to use our children against me. Oops, no kids, that won't work. How about threatening my reputation? But no, my reputation will only suffer if I go along with your plan. Only my loving wife's reputation will suffer when everyone finds out she's a whore. That won't make me do it. I'm stumped. I really tried to encourage any of them to say something and was amazed that none of them did. Well, the only thing I can think of is some kind of legal trouble. I saw them flinch. Legal problems then. But I'm not doing anything illegal except maybe speeding, but I don't see how that would work. No, it would have to be something that could result in actual jail time. What then? I sat for a moment, pondering, and then sincerely and literally snapped my fingers. Wait a minute. I think I've figured it out. The computers at work have flagged some of my accounts to check for irregularities, the kind of errors that could get the attention of one of the regulators and land me in jail for fraud. Of course, that wouldn't work either. Again, their heads shifted, this time glancing at each other. This was obviously the linchpin of their plan, which they must have thought was fail-safe. They must also have wondered how I'd gotten to it so quickly and why it hadn't worked. It wouldn't have worked because all the bugs are in the master file on the central server. But I keep the originals on my own secure computer that only I have access to, and when I make any updates or changes, I update the entire file so all the changes will be overwritten. If there is any investigation, I can easily prove that the mistakes were not made by me. Plus, the system keeps track of who is making the changes, so it will be obvious that it wasn't me. None of the three people sitting in front of me were too tech-savvy even on a normal level. They had no idea of the layers of security that had been put in place to protect our clients' information and catch those who tried to jeopardize it. That certainly explains all the strange things that happen at work, but that requires access to the master file, and none of you have that. In fact, the only people who can have access to my master files are my boss, Mr. Herman, and his boss, Mr. Bennett. I can't imagine Mr. Bennett doing something like this. But Mr. Herman? He might be subject to a little influence, a little manipulation. But how could he convince himself to jeopardize his freedom and his career by doing something like this? Does anyone have any suggestions? I looked around, but there was no answer. That didn't surprise me. I was very close to home at this point. Obviously, they thought they had completely fooled me. Mr. Herman is very smart. This I admit to him. But he's not very good with computers, and he's kind of lonely and awkward. He's very introverted, so I'm willing to bet the opportunity to screw a couple hot women, say you, my dear wife, and you, my slutty sister-in-law. I bet that would be incentive enough for a guy like that. I wonder what he would say to law enforcement about the coercion offered to him. Thoughts? They just sat there, looking as defeated as they were. It was sad, really. They thought they were going to make it. You see, I had noticed the discrepancy in my accounts a long time ago, and I had proof that Mr. Herman had done it. I went to him, talked to him face to face, and he told me what he was doing and why. The rest was not difficult to find out. With the information Mr. Herman gave me, including the revelation that Tamsin had done him a sexual favor, and Elaine had promised to sleep with him. I also monitored Elaine's email account. From all of this, I realized what they were up to. I was making a lot more money than my brother, whose dreams of becoming a professional athlete never had a chance. He worked hard, but he just lacked talent. He somehow latched onto Tamsin, whom he met while visiting a local strip club, and talked her into marrying him. She felt like the sun was shining out of his ass. He was making barely $30,000 a year, and that was only with overtime. They never had much money, and they planned to force me to support them all with the threat of jail hanging over my head. The plan was doomed to failure from the start, though they didn't know it. I liked Mr. Herman and understood why he was doing this, so I agreed to keep his secret on the condition, of course, that he would stop doing it. He agreed and thanked me for not giving him away. He also handed me the tapes of the meetings in his office where he had been approached by that awful trio. Because of the rules we had to follow, he recorded everything that went on in his office. They weren't just offering incentives, they were threatening what would happen if he didn't accept. "What do you want, Parker?" Tamsin asked, finally engaging in the conversation they so badly desired. "You've obviously figured it out. You've defeated us. So what do you want?" "Well, Tamsin, I confess the first thing I thought of was to have some fun with your breasts. I've heard my asshole brother brag about them often enough, and frankly, they're not one of Elaine's strong points." Tamsin smiled again at the compliment, while my wife frowned. "But that would just bring me down to your level, so I'm agreeing to a no-contest divorce with an 80/20ths property split, no alimony, and you'll have nothing to do with my pension. It's not much, but it's mine." "That's ridiculous. Why should I agree to that?" "Because I could send you to jail and take everything. Isn't 20% and your freedom better than nothing?" She agreed, albeit reluctantly. Apparently, she had counted on a trouble-free life, and the whole thing was an incredible disappointment. Epilogue. The divorce did go quickly. The judge asked why she had agreed to such an unequal division, and I wondered briefly what she would say. Was she willing to risk jail herself to get me in trouble? After all, technically what I'd done was blackmail, and by exposing me, she'd expose herself. "I treated him badly and he deserved it," was all she said. The judge signed the agreement, and it was finalized a few months later. To my surprise, Mr. Herman began giving me rave reviews, and I was soon promoted. My brother, on the other hand, became depressed when his plan didn't work out, and the prospect of working a shitty job for the rest of his life caused him to drink more and underperform, and he was let go. Tamsin finally realized what was in store for her if she stayed with him and divorced him. She was still young and hot and went back to the strip club where Porter found her. She makes more money than he does and is doing pretty well for herself. Now she says she married him because she wanted out of the business and he didn't mind her being a stripper, but she was willing to do what she had to do. From what I heard, Porter worked the night shift as a security guard making minimum wage. After the divorce was finalized, Tamsin showed up at my front door. I was wary of her appearance until she pulled up her top, exposing her braless breasts, and offered me the sex I'd talked about during the confrontation. I'm embarrassed, well, not really, to say that I agreed and did the same thing a few more times. We don't date, of course, but she comes over to my place a few times a week and we have fun like animals. Now I understand why Porter liked her so much. She's willing to do anything. She usually goes home afterward, but sometimes she stays the night. It would certainly stop if either of us met someone, but I don't think either of us are looking now. Elaine was not happy when she heard this. She came over that evening, angry that I was screwing that slut, and offered herself in Tamsin's place. I declined, but offered to let her join us occasionally, provided Tamsin agreed, which she did, but no more than twice a week. So I have a great job that I love, and as much no-strings-attached sex as I can handle. And, truth be told, more than I can handle, leaving Elaine and Tamsin to occasionally play together while I relax and observe. Life is good.